Should the richest 10% of Americans pay off the US national debt? Consider Jethro's village, an early farming village from 10,000 years ago. The people grow an excess of food, mainly wheat grain, year after year. There's enough food for everyone, and the chief builds storehouses to store the excess food. The excess food means the chief can always help his villagers when necessary, but most of the food is just stored for years, going unused. After several generations, a new chief starts to borrow excess food from other villagers. He builds more storehouses to store even more food that he doesn't need and goes unused. As he borrowed the food, he has to pay interest to the other villagers. However, he makes the villagers pay the interest on the food that they don't own. Now, substitute the USA for the village and substitute money for food. That's how the wealthiest Americans have accumulated almost a third of their wealth. They've used their influence over politicians to get the government to borrow money and give it to the wealthy, even though they don't need it. The government has then forced the rest of the people to pay the interest. Wealthy Americans will say it's unfair to make them pay off the debt with money they earned, but they didn't earn it. If you're American and not part of the wealthiest 10%, they forged your signature on a loan application, hid the money under their mattress, and tricked your bank into setting up a monthly payment to pay the interest. In December 2025, the wealthiest 10% of Americans had almost $120 trillion, while the national debt was about $38.4 trillion. The debt wasn't even a third of the wealth owned by the 10%. Like Jethro's village never needed to borrow more food, the US never needed to borrow more money. So, should the wealthiest Americans use the money they borrowed to pay off the debt they created?